Hey guys, it's Miss Turnbull here with your Tuesday video. We're back to the regular schedule this week, so you'll have a second video this week on Thursday. Let's get into what we're learning about today, which is solving for an angle in a triangle if we have two different sides. So up until this point, we've talked about how to solve for different sides if we have an angle and a side. Now we're going to talk about how do we solve for an angle if we have two sides. So you'll recall from the previous videos that we talked about these three ratios: tangent, sine, and cosine. And we talked about how we often remember these, which is SO, and TOA, right? TOA, SOH, CAH. Now, when we are trying to solve for the angle for theta in these formulas, what we have to do is use the second function. So the second function will look like this on your calculator. It'll say tan with a -1, okay? Or sine with a -1. Cosine with, you guessed it, a -1. And all we have to do is the cosine of adjacent over hypotenuse, or the second sine function of opposite over hypotenuse, or the second tangent function of opposite over over adjacent. My mistake, over adjacent. Okay, so we're just going to be using a different button this time. So let's take a look at these questions. These are the simplest versions of these questions where they're asking you what is the angle to the nearest degree, and they've already calculated this stuff in the brackets for us. So let's take a calculator. I'll show you how we are going to figure these out. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller so that we can see the questions. And again, we're checking to make sure that our calculator is in degree mode, which it is here. So we've got 2.0503. We're going to go into trig, second function, tangent. That tells us that this angle, does it want it rounded to the nearest degree? So this angle is 64 degrees. Okay, let's try it with the cosine one. So this time we've got 0.1219. Again, we're finding that second function. You may have to press the shift button on your calculator in order to get to this. And we're looking for cosine this time, and that tells us that the angle is 83 degrees. Here's another tangent one, 0.6494. Second function tangent. This one is 33 degrees. And the last example like this, 0.8746, and this is a sine example. Second function of sine tells us that this angle is 61 degrees. Okay, these are the simple questions when we're looking to solve for an angle. When we're trying to do something that's a little bit more complicated, they'll show you questions that look like this. So it's a triangle. They give us two sides. We have to do two things. First, we have to decide what ratio. And then second, we're going to calculate. So let's do this one. We need to find this angle here. This side is opposite to the angle, and this side is adjacent to the angle, which tells us that this is going to be tangent. Okay, let's take a look at the next one here. This is the angle. This is still opposite, but this one is the hypotenuse, which tells us this one's going to be sine. And this one, here's the angle here. This is the hypotenuse, and this side is the adjacent. So this is going to be cosine. All right, so again, tan, it's the second function, same ratio. So opposite over adjacent. Okay, so it's going to be the second function of tan, and 29 divided by 38. So let's take our calculator. 29 divided by 38 gives us 0.76315, and so on and so on. And then we need to do the second tangent function of that number tells us this angle is 37.3 degrees. Okay. The next one we said is going to be sine. So sine, second function, same ratio, opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, so it's going to be the second function of sine of 34 over 55. So 34 divided by 55. And the second function of sine tells us this angle is 38.2 degrees. And the last example here is cosine. I should write that properly. Cosine. And again, same ratio as before, adjacent over hypotenuse. This is the second function of cosine, 22 over 44. And I know that 22 is half of 44. We're going to do the second cosine function this time, and it tells us that that angle is 60 degrees. Okay, so a little bit more complicated, but the hardest part is just trying to remember which ratio do we want to use. Okay, look at your angle, whichever one you're using, and then ask yourself, okay, the sides that I have, are they opposite, are they adjacent, or are they hypotenuse? Okay, you'll have two of them if the question wants you to do it this way. All right, last example here. It says a 9-meter ladder rests against the side of a wall. So we're going to draw this. I'm going to say this is the wall. Here's the ladder. The bottom of the ladder is 1.5 meters from the base of the wall. 1.5 meters. Determine the measure of the angle between the ladder and the ground. Here's the angle here. Ladder and the ground. And they said this is a 9-meter ladder to the nearest degree. So this is theta. We have the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. So that tells us this is a cosine question. Cosine is ca, so adjacent over hypotenuse. So it's going to be the second function of cosine of 1.5 divided by 9. 1.5 divided by 9. And then we're doing cosine here, so second cos. That tells us that that angle is 80.4 degrees. That look a little bit more like a 0. All right, this is a word problem, which means it requires a word answer. So the angle between the ladder and the ground is 80.4 degrees. All right, easy peasy. So this is how we find angles when we already know two sides of a triangle. Another thing that you need to remember too is that all angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. All angles in every triangle add up to 180 degrees. So sometimes you don't even need to do all the trigonometry work if you remember that all of the angles together equal 180 degrees. We'll be talking about solving triangles later, and we'll be talking about trying to find, okay, what are all of the angles, all of the sides? And the fact of the matter is that once you have the right angle in your triangle, which you will always have, and you've solved for one of your angles, you can just do simple subtraction to figure out what the last angle is. You do not need to calculate it again using the trigonometry. All right, guys, I hope this video has helped you understand how to solve for angles in right angle trigonometry. If you have any questions, please remember to ask them. Book yourselves a time slot to see your teacher. Send us an email. Let us know if you're struggling, and we will do our best to help you out. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday.